Welcome back. It's Beyond the Box Score. I hope you liked our new intro. I very much so enjoyed that. Kind of dives into a little bit of what we're all about here. And for those who don't know, this is Beyond the Box Score. I'm Dan Schneier. That's Jacob Gibbs. And this is a show that started a couple years ago when Adam Azer, host of Fantasy Football Today, said, let's get Jacob and Dan on a Monday morning to kind of go beyond the box score and see what the actual analytics data and on my end, the all 22 film says about what we're watching and what we can expect moving forward. So what you can expect on this show is a deep dive into all sorts of things when it comes to analysis. It could be data, it could be route participation, it could be a lot of the things we're talking about today. And I'm really excited about today's show because of that. I think the four topics we have for you are all a little piece of what Jacob and I think about on a daily basis as far as looking for cheat codes and different ways to approach fantasy football prognostication, and to give you guys an opportunity to really get ahead of your league. So you're actually processing this information, using it in your drafts and during the season, and hopefully giving you an edge. So you're going to get that on Beyond the Box Score twice a week. You can find us here. Please do us a favor before the show. Hit the like button right now. Please hit that like button right now. You just got to hover your hand, as I always say, over the mouse and click. It's a very easy situation, and yet it helps us a lot. We're looking to grow the show. We're starting from scratch. I've read a lot of great feedback. I've heard bad feedback too. That's part of the job. But what I have heard is that you like what we're doing, what we're trying to do here on this show, taking it a step further. What we need is proof of purchase. We need you guys to show that you're liking it. We need you guys to hit the like button. We need you guys to leave a comment now, leave it in the future. Throughout shows, type in comments. We'll get some questions featured up. We'll feature fun comments. Producer Aaron is on top of that. And just support the show in those two ways. Share it as well. If you're listening, make sure you download every episode and subscribe on iTunes. Other than that, we won't ask much of you. And I want to also talk to you guys a little bit about, because I mean, I wouldn't be the promo god without it. No, not the plug god. I don't even remember my own names. I wouldn't be the plug god without doing this. But listen, this is that month. You know what that month means. It's Draftathon month. That means here at Fantasy Football Today, we are raising money for St. Jude Children's Hospital. And I want to make sure you know that that is the premier charity. And you could look it up, do your own research, but it is the number one charity where all the money is going to the cause. And this is such a great cause, St. Jude. So you'll see more stuff throughout this month. I'm playing a charity tennis match against Adam Azer. Whooped him 6-2, 6-0 last year. This year, we are going for the double bagel, even though he's played a lot and I have played none. Doesn't matter. I am going to double bagel him. Come back on this show and brag about it. But please do yourself a favor and check out some of the fundraisers that we got going. We'll have auctions going, things you can do, join listener leagues, and it'll be a great time. And you'll be raising money for St. Jude. Other than that, it's time to talk some fantasy football, Jacob. So let's get into some of the stuff today. We've got four big topics. I'm not going to promo them all right now because I want them to be a little bit of a surprise, but we're going to start with one that is the most important to me, because I think at this point, Jacob, if you're playing fantasy football and you're not aware of this cheat code, this first cheat code, then you're putting yourself at a massive disadvantage. A lot of people are aware of it, but today we're going to go into why it's such a cheat code. And that cheat code is quarterback rushing. And we know how the game works today. You could play in a 6-point fantasy league for a 6-point passing touchdown league or a 4-point passing touchdown league, Jacob. What also happens every single time is 1 point for every 10 rushing yards, usually with fractional, and 6 point for rushing TDs. So when it comes down to it, it does give you a massive advantage to chase these quarterbacks who have the ability to run. We saw it last year with Drake May. We saw it last year with Lamar Jackson. We saw it at times with Justin Fields. We're going to get into a lot of those players, I'm sure, today. But where do you want to start with quarterback rushing and why it is such a cheat code for fantasy managers to approach their drafts looking for these types of quarterbacks?
Hey, Dan. Excited to prognosticate with you today. Shout out to Austin Lim, who presented that intro to us. That's very fun, very cool to have a fan-made intro to start the show. Yeah, we're talking about cheat codes today. That's the title of the show. We're talking about quarterback rushing, running back receiving, and then some team-level stuff. So quarterback rushing, if you're old, like Dan and me, I'm post 30 now. How old are you, Dan, if you don't mind?
Too old to say.
Older than 30. If you're old like us, you probably are familiar with the Konami code. Rich Rebar, who's coming on the show on Thursday, one of the best analysts alive in terms of fantasy football. He is the one who originally presented the Konami code and kind of got us nerds so excited about the phrase cheat code as it pertains to fantasy. And so today's show is kind of paying homage to Rich, to JJ Zachariason, who's going to be a guest on Beyond the Box Score as well, the late round QB author. We've been talking about this for a while, is I guess why I want to start with those guys as it pertains to QB rushing. But still, I do think that we can get an edge with some of these younger quarterbacks who we haven't quite seen do it yet. So we're going to get into Drake May today. We're going to talk about a lot of these quarterbacks who do present a threat with their legs. And I also am excited to share some of the stuff that I've uncovered in the newsletter. So we're going to go way back into even collegiate data and stuff like that. Because everybody knows, draft rushing quarterbacks, but I don't know if you've maybe seen some of these stats. So I'm going to start by sharing a tweet from Ryan Heath, who is another one of the many, many awesome guests who are going to be joining us soon. I think Ryan's episode is next week. So very excited for that. And he does a lot of cool research where he looks at correlation between stats and fantasy points and gives you an idea of what's been sticky year over year in terms of like repeating among stats, and then also what's been predictive of next season fantasy points. And so he did that for the quarterback position, just looking at all quarterback stats. And Aaron, if I can share my screen here, beautiful. So it's a little fuzzy here, but I think you can see it if you're on the YouTube audience. And then we need to do a better job. We're rusty. We're new to this, but like I've re-listened to some of the podcasts, and it's like if you're listening on the audio stream, you have no idea what I'm talking about right now as we go through the QB charts and stuff. So just want to be cognizant of that as much as we can, Dan. Okay, so obviously the most predictive of future season fantasy points is previous season fantasy points, which is no surprise. If you're good, you're scoring fantasy points. That's the best predictor. But the next highest is designed rushing attempts. And then it's scramble rushing yards would be the next highest among stats that don't involve fantasy point scoring. So significantly higher than passing touchdowns, deep throws, passing yards, any of these completions, any of these passing stats. In terms of what's predictive of future scoring is the rushing stats. And then another one here that's crazy because pressure to sack ratio has become more and more prevalent in like football conversations lately. And I think, it's sometimes tough to parse through real life discussions and how they relate to fantasy scoring. And so it's great when, analysts like Ryan, JJ do a great job with this kind of stuff and like dig into it. And what does it mean for fantasy? Ryan's research shows that pressure to sack ratio is actually more predictive than passing touchdowns. So I thought that was a really interesting note as well.
I was thinking, Jacob, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. We talk a lot in fantasy about how much more valuable, or at least we do on this show, how much more valuable a target is for a running back in the passing game versus a carry. And we have numbers to quantify that. To me, that's becoming a little less important just because running back targets are so down league wide and continuing to trend down. The flip side of that is I wonder what the data says, and I'm sure you don't have this, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts on this, Jacob, about the value of a quarterback scramble versus a quarterback drop back pass attempt, because I would guess there's an even greater dispersion between the quarterback scramble versus the quarterback pass attempt versus the running back target versus running back carry.
Yeah, so if you look at this chart, this is Ryan J _Heath on Twitter. He's got both of those. So scramble rush attempts, it's a 0.472 correlation predicting to next season's fantasy.
Sorry, it was hard to see the chart.
Yeah, for sure. 0.472, whereas just a straight drop back is 0.31. If you're looking at like how many fantasy points it's worth, you're saying like a drop back pass compared to a scramble. Is that what the question is? So yeah, this isn't exactly answering that. This is just what's more predictive of future scoring.
Okay.
And so it's significantly more, predictive to have a scramble than a drop back pass attempt. But yeah, I could find that just fantasy points per dropback on scrambles compared to just throws pretty easily. So the next thing I wanted to bring up here, I wanted to highlight some of the highest single season collegiate football scramble rates for
Okay.
guys who might be relevant in fantasy this year. I want to talk about scrambling and designed rushing, and just look at what we've got in the quarterback landscape right now. So if you're watching on YouTube, you see this. This is from Fantasy Newsletter that I put out a month ago or so. Um, and Justin Fields really is unique. He has the most scrambles in a season ever at the NFL level. Most scramble yards, sorry. Jaden Daniels actually broke the most scrambles in total volume number of
Yes.
scrambles last year. But this is collegiate football, the highest single season scramble rates, the percentage of dropbacks that resulted in a scramble, 21% for Fields. The next highest, and this is the highest rate that any of these guys ever had in a season, was Drake May and Jane Daniels at 15%. So just blows them out of the water. I
Let's
We've seen Fields scale his scrambling back a little bit year over year. That's pretty typical for quarterbacks as they get into their NFL careers. So I don't want to assume that he'll like scramble more than Jaden or anything, but like in just as it pertains to like rushing quarterbacks, Fields truly is unique. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Well, Fields is, I think, at this point in both of our minds, one of the biggest screaming values at the position because of this and because of where we think this Jets scheme is headed. But one player that I think really stands out to me that I wanted to touch on first, and we have some questions about him in the chat, so I want to kind of get interactive with it. And one of those questions was earlier. I'm trying to re-find it. I may not. Yes, it was from Ryan, and he wants to know, do you think that Drake May runs enough under the new Josh McDaniels scheme? Because obviously you have the numbers here, which show that he has a high scramble rate. We saw it at UNC, and I think you actually have some good data on this that I remember from something you tweeted a month or two ago, maybe, Jacob, on your projection for what Drake May will be as a scrambler in this offense. Because I know you well enough to know we both are. Drake May be our most rostered quarterback in a lot of our two quarterback leagues.
Yeah, well, definitely. That Drake May is the primary reason to parse through this data and separate it as scrambling and design running, because Drake May had almost no designed runs last year. And
Yeah.
his new offensive coordinator is Josh McDaniels, who has a history of creating a lot of designed runs for quarterbacks when he has quarterbacks who operate in that way. I don't want to copy paste the Cam Newton stuff over because
Sure.
it's a different quarterback here. Drake May is much more capable as a downfield thrower than Cam Newton was late in his career. But Cam Newton under Josh McDaniels had the most design rushes we've ever seen for a quarterback. And so that's obviously exciting because May did so much as a scrambler last year. And that's something we saw at the collegiate level too. He's very effective with his scrambles, very efficient with his scrambles, and he scrambles at a really high rate, higher than Jaden Daniels. And last year, he was the most effective scrambler among quarterbacks in terms of yards per scramble. And he scrambled at the second highest rate, behind only Jaden Daniels.
Right.
So yeah, definitely like if the scrambling doesn't drop off, which it could, I could see McDaniels. Another reason people get excited about McDaniels is that he targets the running back position a ton. That's
Yep.
something we'll talk about later when we get to the second cheat code here. And so maybe that's good for Travion Henderson. Maybe that means fewer scrambles for Drake May, because he's checking down more. But that could be offset by the designed rushing. And
Yeah.
overall, we could see his running just elevate from what it was last year. But I did want to talk more about the guys on this list. This range right here is really interesting to me. So
Yeah.
the top five in terms of the highest single season college football scramble rates are Justin Fields, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Milroe, Jalen Hurts. No real surprises there. We get some surprises after that. Tyler Shuck, Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, and Jackson Dart. Does anything stand out to you, Dan?
Easily what stands out to me is Tyler Shuck next on the list, sixth highest at 11.9%. I think it stands out to me, not because I'm surprised by it, because I watched a ton of Tyler Shuck tape for a while there. I was kind of in on Shuck. I'm not sure where I stand overall. There's a lot of interesting things about his profile as we move forward, and he may get an actual opportunity to start right away. But I don't think a lot of people view Shuck as that type of player from a fantasy standpoint. I think a lot of people view Shuck as this big, lumbering guy who was where, and he did a good job of this at college level, better than a lot of these quarterbacks, working through the progression, getting the ball to the running back. But there was also that other aspect of his tape, which showed up a lot. He's a very good vertical mover. I didn't find him to be a good lateral mover, which I think could lead to bigger problems in the NFL. A lot of shying away from contact, not avoiding sacks, but vertical mover, somebody who can decide to scramble. That's what I'm looking at with Tyler Shuck. And I think given the context of this whole Saints situation, if he does start this year, their offensive line, losing Ryan Ramczyk, I'm not a big Trevor Penning fan. I think it could be ugly there. Defense aging. There could be a lot of scramble opportunities. It almost kind of reminds or like figures to me a little bit to resemble what Drake May went through last year with the Patriots. Bad offensive line, a lot of scrambling, which weirdly enough could lead to some kind of value for Shuck in 2 QB Superflex.
Yeah, I've been really curious how this will translate because he has, Alvin Kamara, who's just like he checked out, and that's what the Saints
Right.
offense has been. But new offensive coordinator who has, just worked with Jalen Hurts. We could see some rushing, some use of Shuck's legs for sure. I think they'll do a lot of play action and boots and rollouts and stuff. And just wanted to bring him up here because this is an interesting range, very, very high. Brock Purdy is the next one to bring up because his rate really increased last year. So I just want to highlight him here before we'll get to that in a moment. 11.6 was his highest collegiate scramble rate at Iowa State, higher than anything we got in a single season from Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson or Anthony Richardson. And then the last one I wanted to bring up here was Jackson Dart, your boy. Are you anticipating that they're going to weaponize his legs if he gets under center for the Giants this year?
Not only am I anticipating it, the evidence is damning as far as, and in a good way, as far as that. Every single quarterback Brian Daboll has worked with has design runs. That includes Tommy DeVito. They were running design run calls for Tommy DeVito, for Tyrod, for Drew Lock. I mean, Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock are nowhere near the athlete Jackson Dart is. And that's something that I saw Lane Kiffin do a little bit of. I felt like there was good timed calls for QB Bash, a lot of different varieties of power run calls for the quarterback, which you kind of typically see for like a Josh Allen type. And I think Josh McDaniels will do it for Drake May. They have the body type for it. Jackson Dart kind of has the body type for it. He's not quite as big as a Josh Allen or Drake May, not as athletic, 6'3", but he's got that thick build. So I do think that if he does get in this year, we're going to see design runs for him. He, to me, could be a lot like a Drake May type end of season if he does play.
Yeah, I love that call. I'm curious what you think of this. I don't know if I've brought this comparison up to you. When I first watched Dart, I was like, he reminds me of if you like mixed Drake May and Baker Mayfield. Maybe not quite as talented, but like just
not
the
quite
way
as
he
talented.
plays, he just has this mad lad to him. And I think
know exactly what you mean from a play style standpoint. Exactly what you mean. He challenges the intermediate level. He challenges the whole shots against zone, takes these wild throws. That's the Baker in him, and can go over the top and kind of drop a ball in so it goes under so the receiver can run there. And that's more of the Drake May in him. I just don't quite think he's as talented as those two players from an arm talent standpoint.
Yeah, but as a rusher too, he's kind of like those guys, especially Baker, where he like thinks he's more athletic than he is, and he's a good athlete. But like this, I think it could lead to him getting hurt, but it also like could lead to a lot of rushing production. We saw Baker really produce a lot with his legs last year. So yeah, keep that in mind with Dart. If he gets on the field, he could be fantasy relevant with his legs.
It's very interesting, Jacob, because and we'll get off of this in a moment because we have to get through a lot on the show. But it's very interesting to me because data suggests that, and this is really only recently, for the first time since because until 2021, this wasn't the case at all. But in recent years, there actually has been value in targeting the top tier of quarterbacks. But as long as you're targeting the right ones, and that's all the super athletic ones, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. And there's been a gap in scoring. But I still find it that there's enough of these guys coming up that we've gone over that also kind of fit our code, our cheat code here, that I just can't find myself buying into that tier as much, despite knowing what the data says about the top tier of scoring, because I think more are coming up in this range. Some of the guys we talked about, May, Fields, that are just ultimately going to be excellent values.
Yeah, I agree. Ready to take a first break?
Yeah, let's take our break from here to hear a word from our sponsor. We'll get a little bit more after that into some quarterback data, and then we're going to dive into some running back receiving data, what play action and motion mean. I love that stuff. That's like the film-based stuff. And then route concepts that Jacob wants to feature. So let's take a quick break first.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure,
Just try to keep up.
every face-off,
This ends now.
and every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime.
all 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right.
Quick little bit of breaking news, Jacob,
Okay.
that I know you're going to love, so I have to throw it in there. Colston Loveland cleared to go for the start of camp. Your boy, my boy. It's a good time for us.
Yep, for sure. Colson Levin's going to have a big year, I think. So I looked it up, and dropbacks were worth almost 30%, 29% more fantasy points per dropback on scrambles than on straight dropbacks.
And what was the number for running back targets versus running back carries? Do you
It's
know that by any chance?
about in that range. We'll get to it in a
Okay.
moment here.
Okay.
I think it's actually more. Okay, so on the screen here, we've got the designed run rate for career for quarterbacks, and then I've got also the designed runs per game for quarterbacks. And I wanted to point out Jackson Dart here in the exact same range as Josh Allen, who Brian Dable also has experience with and has compared him to. And I also wanted to point out Bo Nix. He's lower than I would have expected in both design run rate and scramble rate. He wasn't particularly high in scramble rate either, in the same range as Joe Burrow. But again, you'll see Josh Allen wasn't that high either. He is somebody who ran a lot more. So Bo ran a lot as a rookie. I'm really curious how much we'll see that continue, or maybe with better weapons, he won't have to do that as much. So here we've got, just want to read this for the listeners, best season college football designed runs per game, along with designed rushing yardage per game. Lamar Jackson, 11.4 designed runs per game, 97 rushing yards per game. Just wanted to bring that up because the scramble rates weren't super high. And I do think this is all sort of interesting with Lamar. Like, have you seen the stat that he either had none or maybe just one designed run from inside the 10-yard line, or maybe it's the 5? Last year, it was like all Derrick Henry. A lot of people were worried.
I would imagine that continues.
I think so. Yeah, a lot of people were worried that Lamar was going to like vulture those looks from Henry, and that would make Henry look valuable. But it was all Henry. And Lamar really he's been dependent on the scrambling more so lately, which I wonder if he doesn't have to do that as much as the Monken offense just continues to be a juggernaut.
Yep.
I mean, his legs are always going to be part of what he brings to the table, of course. But I just thought that was interesting because in terms of collegiate tendencies, he's not a guy who was scrambling nearly as much as like Jaden Daniels or even Milroe or Justin Fields.
And that's kind of goes to me, at least, that goes into the misconception about Lamar from the very start from people, some of the analysts. He ran a progression system at Louisville, and he was a lot more advanced, and we see it now at the NFL level. I thought you did a great job breaking it down on our quarterback ranking show. For those who missed it, take a look back on this YouTube page. We have a lot of good content we already put out there. One that got buried a bit because it was maybe a little too early, but we want to have fun and talk about it, was our quarterback rankings, get into a lot of this data there. But that's the difference to me. Lamar has evolved to become a quarterback that doesn't need to scramble as much.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to talk about JJ McCarthy real quick. So his, if you like compare him to Bo Nix, they were pretty similar in the number of runs that they took in terms of scrambling and designed runs, but he was way more efficient than Bo Nix was. Nix really wasn't a super efficient runner, whereas McCarthy popped up as like, I think I've talked about this on Beyond the Box Score before. He was, yards after contact per rush. He was the 8th highest career behind Malik Willis, Lamar Jackson, Jane Daniels, Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields, Hendon Hooker, and Drake May. I'm really excited. And I've heard, I think it was the Mina Kimes show, mentioned that like there's rumblings that they're going to use that more and weaponize his legs in Minnesota this year. So I'm excited, Loki, to see what we get from him. I think that could offset some of I think in general, that offense is going to be lower scoring than people realize compared to last year, and is going to lean into the run as much as they can. That's what their offensive line moves this offseason seem to indicate. But if he can run more than expected, he might end up being like one of the more productive per dropback fantasy producers of the quarterback position. That's what Sam Darnold was last year. Darnold was like top 5 in
Yes.
fantasy points per dropback.
And that's as much, I feel like, of a Kevin O'Connell and a situation stat as anything else. But you're
And
right.
he might run more than Darnold.
Right.
You know?
He's
Yeah,
gonna run more than Darnold. That was
I
evident
think
on his
so.
Michigan tape. It's a
Yeah.
matter of, I'm curious what you said. Do they at all? It's interesting to think about because they've kind of let it run through a lot of these quarterbacks, Cousins, Darnold, but do they at all alter the scheme to fit what McCarthy did better at Michigan? Because I think back to some of that tape, and I think some of the bootleg action, a lot of play action boot is a really good way to utilize McCarthy. It's just not a lot of what I saw with Cousins and a little bit Darnold.
Yeah. All right. To close out, I just want to run through the scramble rate leaders for 2024. This is the percentage of dropbacks that resulted in a scramble. Jaden Daniels at the top, 12.5%. Malik Willis, 11.4%. Drake May, 10.8%. Justin Fields, 9.7%. Jalen Hurts, 9%. Brock Purdy and Lamar Jackson at 8.4%. Bryce Young at 8.2%. He had a ton of scrambling touchdowns last year. I think he had 4 or 6 scrambling touchdowns, something crazy like that. Josh Allen, Bo Nix, 7.8%. Caleb Williams, 7.4%. Caleb was really effective as a scrambler, and that was good to see because I thought that might be part of his game, but he didn't have to do it at a high rate at the collegiate level. But in terms of like avoiding tackles, creating yards after contact, and just generally efficient rushing, that all showed up for him last year, and he ran a lot. So Bo Nix and Caleb Williams both above Anthony Richardson at 7.1%. Kyler Murray, 6.7%. Baker Mayfield, 6.5%. And then you get down into CJ Stroud, Mahomes, Herbert, Russell Wilson in the 5 to 6% range. So we've seen Kyler Murray's rate continue to decline year over year. I do think that's relevant. Here's the best season scramble rates for any of these quarterbacks from 2020 to 2024. 15%, 16% actually for Justin Fields. So like Jaden Daniels last year broke records with his 12.5% rate. Fields, I don't think it's going to matter because New York probably isn't going to produce very many dropbacks, but like that, this is why people continue to be so excited about Fields for fantasy. Lamar Jackson, 12.1%, 10.8% Drake May, 10% Daniel Jones, 10% Jalen Hurts. Do you think the Daniel Jones running days are behind us, or is that? I mean, this isn't designed runs was probably more day ball, but like he ran.
That was 2022. There were a lot of design runs that year, and the whole offense was basically, generally speaking, he was taught to come to your first read. If it's not there, check the B gap and run. It was the whole system. I don't think Steichen will run that same system, but you can be sure that the Daniel Jones running days are not over. If you sign a Daniel Jones, no matter what coach you have to use him as a runner. He's not a good thrower of the football. He can't process defenses. So one of the ways that you can use him is as a runner. It's like a key factor. So no, I don't think if he plays, he'll run.
Okay. Yeah. I think on that note of like declining scramble rates, that's basically what you can expect. And I think that is relevant to bring up for Drake May, Jane Daniels, and these guys as you're comparing them to, Lamar and Josh Allen. It's like, wow, they scramble more than them. This is probably the wildest we'll see them play. So I've got Jalen Hurts from 2020 to 2024. It's been a pretty steady decline in his scramble rate. Same for Justin Fields. The last 2 years, his rate's been below 10%. Lamar Jackson has been fairly steady up and down, but not quite as many, 10% and above years lately. Same thing with Josh Allen, who had like a 12% rate and averaged 9 fantasy points per game as a rusher early in his career. He's kind of settled down lately where he runs in the red zone a lot. But overall, this is something that we see decline typically. All right. Last thing I want to bring up was designed rushing. So we've got like 20% for Jalen Hurts, 18% for Anthony Richardson and Justin Fields. Where the heck is Drake May? It's like 3%.
Well, that's huge.
Exactly. Like if that increases, he's not even on this list of design runs per game. Caleb Williams is the bottom of the list, 1.5. I think Mays was like 0.3 or something like that. So it really could be. I've got him at QB 8. I think basically after the top.
Wow, you have him as your QB 8, Jacob? That's wild. I did not know that.
Yeah, I think after the top tier of, like guys that you really feel solid about, like I'm just content taking him. I don't know. Who do you?
So you've got, I'm looking at your rankings now. You've got him over Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, and Goff in that order. And then there's Love and Prescott down there as well.
Yeah. So I've got my rankings on the screen here, and it's just like you can tell that this matters to me. I want quarterbacks who can run.
Yes. It's a little, I don't know if I'm ready for that just yet with Drake. I like it. I understand it. I actually love the fit with McDaniels. I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve personally for the fit, just because every single quarterback that goes through that system talks about how much more intricate it is versus a lot of these like number systems. Like it's a system that over time, some quarterbacks have really thrived in, and others that, in my opinion, have really struggled from a processing standpoint. And processing has been one area of Drake's game, Jacob, dating back to, what they did with Phil Longo at UNC. And then when they lost Phil Longo for his last year, that changeover. And even last year with Van Pelt, I felt like they really simplified things that I still have a question mark on with May. It's open-ended. It's not necessarily, I think we lost Jacob for a second there. Now it's just me in here. We're going to wait to get Jacob back in here because I don't want to lose him for this. But when it comes to Drake May, for me, that system I think could take time from a processing standpoint in the passing game, Jacob. So it's just giving me a little bit of reservation on ranking him high because I believe in what he can do as a runner, Drake May. It's more of what is going to happen as a passer early in the year.
Yeah, I just want access to that rushing. I get it what you're saying, like, but yeah, if he isn't what you want, then you can probably just replace him in stream.
Probably. And even as you go down this list, I mean, we're talking about players I'd love to have at 17, 18, 19. It just shows how deep the QB position is. McCarthy, we just talked about his upside. That's your 20th ranked quarterback. Bryce Young, we just talked about how he's scrambling more, understanding how to navigate pockets more, adding that layer to his game. That's your 21st ranked guy. Trevor Lawrence is down there. Dak Prescott, Jordan Love. These are all players you can rely on. I mean, even Matthew Stafford and Tua, they offer nothing from a rushing standpoint, but they offer upside for 300 type yard games. So I would agree with you. It makes sense theoretically and strategically speaking to take your swing on May earlier, knowing that you have that fallback option.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to take one more break and then hit the running back reception?
Yeah, let's take another break to hear a word from our sponsors. Before we do that, I do want to say, please help us grow this show. Hit the like button right now if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Comments help as well. Like and comment, even if you're listening after the show. Otherwise, let's take a quick break and we'll get right back into this.
They want to take this place from us.
My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Man, every time I see that 1923 promo, Jacob, I want to get into it. There are so many great shows on Paramount Plus in that universe. I got a chance to watch Landman last year. Incredibly entertaining show. Love Billy Bob. And it's just I see it, I get hyped, I want to get into it. But at the same time, it's football season, baby. So I don't think I'll be watching any shows from this point on. But anyway, let's get back into this data.
All right, Aaron, if I could share my screen here, I want to talk about running back receptions, which have been a cheat code for almost as long as quarterback rushing. Scott Barrett of Fantasy Points Data is the one who originally put me on this. And so I've got a chart here you can see.
Okay.
No matter what scoring system, even in non-PPR, in 2024, running back targets were worth 22% more fantasy points than rushes. So I'm not talking about receptions. I'm talking about just a target in non-PPR formats worth 22% more in 2024. Over the past 10 years, it's a 28%.
And
increase.
You said it was 30% for the quarterback scramble versus dropback, right?
Yeah. And so then if you increase it to half PPR, 86% more.
Wow.
Full PPR, 149%
Wow.
more. You really need targets. And I've done a lot of research the past 5 years or so. I've written about running back targets. If you're looking for true running back one upside, the Christian McCaffrey type of upside, like 300 plus PPR points, then it's felt like you need targets. That's the way it has felt. But lately, things are shifting where we're just not getting as many running back targets. We're not getting as many of these legendary running back seasons. I think backfields are just getting split up more and more. So if you're watching on YouTube, you see here league-wide running back targets are down. They've just been on the decline and were lower than they've been since 2008 in 2024. So passing is down, and that is, part of this, but also the rate of passes that are going to the running back position is down 2. And so this is resulting in like not a single running back with more than 90 targets last year. That's the first time that's happened in a very long time, like before 2010. I've got a chart up that shows,
Yeah.
like just 7 years ago, we were getting 4 to 6 of these seasons per year with 90
Yes.
plus targets. And last year we got none. We were getting,
Crazy difference.
7 to 11 running back seasons with 75 or more targets. And now we're getting like 3 to 4 of these. So it makes you wonder, like, is this cheat code even applicable anymore? Like, does
Right.
it still work on the current system or
So
not? Or if you can find it, like, is it that much more valuable if you can actually hit on
yeah,
that kind of upside?
I have thoughts on both of those things I want to get into real quick. Just start to recap, the two of the cheat codes we went over are quarterback design runs and scrambling. That we think is going up in the NFL, and there's good targets we talked about earlier the show. Now we're talking about how much more valuable a wide running back target is versus a carry. That's the one, Jacob, to answer both your questions, starting with the first one. I think this is a trend that's going to continue. The reason I think that is, one, the running back, we're getting less man coverage situations for these running backs. And that's really where you want to get if you're targeting a running back. If you got these teams that are playing heavy zone, too high, everything top down, a running back target is not as valuable for an offense, in my mind, at least, because there's eyes on the quarterback, there's eyes on the backfield, and you could just collapse, rally, and tackle, and it's just not a valuable play. With that said, as these defenses continue to play the way they are from a schematic standpoint, more of the Vic Fangio tree, we talk about this all the time on the show, Jacob, teams are going to run more. The boxes are advantageous. People are getting either even boxes, and at times I've seen these offenses, and I know you have watching the tape too, Jacob, get +1 in the box, which you never used to get +1 in the box. And if you're getting +1, you're going to run the football. So, and you're highlighting something that you're going to get into a moment. So I don't think it's going to stop. I think this is a trend. We talked about this with not Rich. We talked about this with Nate Tice, I believe, last year. I might be mixing it up who we talked about this with, but it was on this show, and we'll talk about it more in the future. But I think that continues. So on the second part of your question, if you can find the rare cases where these offenses are still designed to get the ball to these running backs, Alvin Kamara and the Saints last year, right? With Clint Kubiak. Maybe that happens with Ken Walker. We'll talk about that another time. Christian McCaffrey, I certainly think if he's healthy, that offense is still featuring him in the passing game. There's going to be a few of these situations, maybe Bijan Robinson. Those are the ones that really have that first round value for me in fantasy. Those are the ones that I want to buy in auctions. Those are the ones that I really want to make sure I can get if I'm starting my team, how to start my team off. So I do think it does make them more valuable. I just think it's harder to find.
Yeah. Yeah. So the value of the running back targets is not changing. It's still worth way more in fantasy. It's just harder and harder to find. What I've got highlighted here is that 7 of the top 15 seasons since 2020 in terms of EPA per rush came last year. So that's 5
Wow.
seasons. You'd expect 3 on average, since it's 15 divided by 5. 7 is the number that came last year. Teams are running more and more effectively. And if you look at those 7 teams, 4 of the 7 ranked top 6 in opponent single high safety rate. And so really think, we talked about it with Nate. I think we talked about it with Ben Gretch as well. I think the meta is changing in the NFL where defenses are getting run on because they've been evolving to stop the pass. And now that's just the way that offenses are leaning. And we just saw it with Philadelphia. I think we're going to continue to see teams lean into it, like we just talked about with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings and what they're wanting to do with bringing in these offensive linemen. So I think, between that and the fact that bell cows are still not a thing,
Right.
still splitting these backfields up, we're getting further and further away from this David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, just fantasy wonderland where we could just get these crazy running back targets, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler. Like, these guys are kind of going away. But we do still have McCaffrey if he's healthy. We do still have Devon Achane
Yes.
and Kamara as well. And then some other sneaky guys who we're going to talk about.
I'll say this about those 3, though. I feel I feel only really confident in McCaffrey because the other 2, I think no matter what, if McCaffrey's on the field, that offense is going to feature him in the passing game. Achane, I'm hopeful for, and I know a lot of people are super high on him, but I think there's a chance Miami's offense can get back to where it was. And if it's operating at its best, it's not going through Achane. in my mind, at least at all in the passing game. And then the Kamara thing is just like, I'm not sold on that offense being running through Kamara again. We'll see though.
I'll disagree with that. Kamara is the
Yeah.
man and has been always, like, no matter which, obviously, Sean Payton, Drew Brees, those things help. But I think he's going to be involved.
Yeah.
Maybe Shuck scrambling more does change things, and it's not quite to the extent that we've seen. But while he's healthy, I think he's going to be really relevant for fantasy. And then
It's a
Achane,
blind spot for me. I just want to make sure I make it clear. He's always been a blind spot for me, Alvin
Yeah.
Kamara. And without Derek Carr, it becomes I think Derek Carr fueled a lot of it, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really interesting because it's like the offense is producing, these really advantageous situations for this player. And in some cases, that might mean that a player who might not otherwise be super relevant for fantasy becomes really good for fantasy. And so that's one effect of a cheat code. But that's not always the case. There are also players who are really, really good and then get put into this, have the cheat code applied, and it's just this insane multiplier.
Right.
But that shouldn't take anything away from George Kittle or from Puka Nacua or from Devon Achane or from Alvin Kamara, right? Or Bucky Irving. Like, these guys are really, really, really good. And so what we're going to try to do today is quantify how much this stuff is affecting them and how, it might affect Bucky Irving going forward to not have all the screen game stuff happening with Liam Cohen, how that might affect the guys in Jacksonville instead, how Brian Thomas Jr. might benefit in some of the ways that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans did last year. And so then, just try to like place all these guys into tiers and buckets so you can understand how they got their production and what it might mean going forward. So on your note about Devon Achane, does it make sense to design so many targets through the running back and tight end? No, most functional offenses don't do that. And a lot of what happened last year in that offense, I do think, was overcompensating for the Tua Tagovailoa aspect of what was happening. But at the same time, Achane is really uniquely talented as a receiver. I've got a cut up on him that's 4 minutes long of just him making freaking awesome plays as a receiver last year. It's not just he has several plays where it's like just a design screen walk-in touchdown because Mike McDaniel is good. But there's also plays where it's like he's lining up, beating a guy down the field, making a contested catch. What are we watching? Like,
completely agree with that.
This doesn't happen at running back. So I don't
released off the line of scrimmage for a running back is really unique. And so I want to make that clear.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from him. I think it makes sense to continue to get him the ball in space and get him the ball in as many creative ways as possible. And I would only expect that to continue. I think he is potentially somebody who is a true cheat code at running back this year.
Sure.
So what I got here is the expected fantasy point leaders at running back. This is using Fantasy Points Data's expected fantasy point model. I really like their model because it takes into consideration where targets are happening, what types of targets they are. Not every target is weighted the same. So checkdowns aren't worth quite as much as like a screen, for instance, And so what I've got here is running back 1 through 12 in terms of the expected fantasy point total for the 10th highest running back in XFP. And I've got the past 4 seasons compared. And I just think that this is relevant because last year we had this outlier season in terms of health at the running back position. And I think it maybe kind of feels like we've got more of these, powerhouse bell cow running backs that we can trust at the top,
Right.
I don't actually think anything has changed. And so at least I suspected that might be the case. And so I tried to look at it from a number of different angles to see if I found anything that indicated that there was a change and that offensive play designers were intentionally like trusting their running back 1 and designing things around that player more than they have in the past. And I didn't find that at all. So if you can see this chart, the green line is last year. And you'll notice at the top end, it's actually lagging behind 21 and 22. The last 2 years are. And so this is the expected fantasy points for the top end running backs, the very best of the best. Not quite as high as the last 2 years, definitely not as high as the years before that. And where green starts to separate itself is like running back 8, running back 9 through 12. And then if you look at the rest of the running backs, running back 13 through 24, green is pretty much consistently above the pack. To me, that says we just had more guys stay healthy. We just had more mid-range bell cows, James Conner, Aaron Jones, and those type of guys stay healthy throughout the year than in years past. I
Sure.
don't think there's really anything changing at the top end. So here's the same thing with snap rate, not XFP, but snap rate for the top running back. So like the running back who had the highest snap rate through the running back who had the 12th highest snap rate. There's not, I mean, Green is just in the same range as the other ones, basically. I don't really think we're getting any more bell cows. I think we just had this weird season where everyone was healthy. Anyone who had a role close to being a bell cow stayed healthy and held the role. So here's another chart looking at, running backs, the number of running backs through a 5-year span who had an 80% snap rate or a 90% snap rate in games that they were the starter. So this is like, it takes out, this running back played 10 games. So his snap rate dropped overall. It's like only in the games they were a starter. You can see it's just a steady and precipitous decline to where we are now, which is the past 5 years. There have only been 5 running backs over a 5-year span who've had a snap rate above 80% as a starter. Compare that to just 2015 to 2019, 15 was the number. It's been cut by a third. No running backs with a snap rate of 90% or higher as a starter over the past 5 years. It's just drastic and quick change. Here's the running backs who have hit that number, 80% over the past 5 years. We've got Kyron Williams twice, and he's somebody who we think could get potentially rug pulled. Maybe he'll just keep being Kyron. We've thought he might get rug pulled in the past, but they keep adding running backs. Najee Harris, not a thing anymore. So like Christian McCaffrey, maybe he'll be back to this, but we don't know. And so really,
they could definitely scale back. Barkley, I think, will continue with it.
Yeah, but it's like these are the guys. These are the 5.
Yeah.
We're like huge decline, and then who are the 5? Not even guys that we feel that good about, really. Maybe Ashton Genty gets added to this list. Maybe Bijan Robinson does. He was close last year.
Marion might.
Yeah, maybe by the end of the year he's playing that type of role. Maybe going forward, like next year he is. I would be shocked
early if Najee can't play.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. So I just wanted to bring all that up because here's like I outlined it like this. Here's the set of circumstances that the running back position faces as we head into 2025. Extraordinarily healthy last year.
Yep.
The running back class, this is going to be really interesting to see what the outcome is. But the class was lauded as like one of the strongest and deepest running back positional groups that we've had in a long, long time.
Yes, sir.
And I think that I loved them as I watched them on film. The draft capital didn't back it up, so we're just going to see.
Draft capital's never going to back it up. I wouldn't focus on that.
At the top of the position, the snap rates are down. They remain lower than ever, and they just keep dropping. Last year was just this outlier year from a health standpoint. And then the other thing affecting the running back position as it pertains to fantasy is that league-wide passing volume continues to drop, and league-wide running back target shares also continues to drop. So as we look forward to 2025, the targets are dropping, which makes the whole position potentially less valuable. And then we maybe have this insertion of new talent and a lot of talent that could play a like specific type of role in the backfield. And if that ends up coming to fruition where like Joe Mixon is ceding passing down work to Woody Marks, or Chase Brown is ceding some passing down work to Taj Brooks, or Ramondre Stevenson, the list goes on and on. Like some of these guys aren't in the full roles that they've been in the past. All of a sudden, we've just got like this hodgepodge of like every backfield mixing and matching.
Yep.
And it feels like I'm just beating my head against the wall here because I've been like kind of on the, if you can find your hero running back that you feel really good about, like I do this year with Achane, at the top of the draft, go there. But most of the time, I'm kind of passing on the early running backs and betting on chaos by taking a bunch of running backs late and hoping that these young, talented guys can step into a role and I can get a cheap running back.
Yeah.
The anti-fragility build, like we've talked about from Sean Siegel and like we talked about with Ben Gretsch last year, like that's how I've been doing it. And I think more than ever, we're kind of positioned for that to be the way to go. This could end up being like a super messy season if there are injuries, because I think backfields are
Right.
continuing to get more and more split, and we just have like there's so much talent right now. There's like, I mean, there's so many backup running backs that I draft. I'm like, well, if this guy gets in, I feel pretty good about DJ
Yes.
Giddens or Devin Neal or
Yes.
Dylan Sampson, whoever it is. Like, I think it could be a really, really messy season. And so I just really want to point that out, because I don't think that ADP has swung super drastically to overreact to what happened last year with the running back position. But I wonder if it might, as we get more into the like casual August type of drafting and not so
Sure.
much like the underdog fantasy ADP stuff. Do you have any thoughts on this? I feel like I've just been on a tangent for a while here.
Well, it's a really interesting point. I think I actually really like how this show's been rolling, and I feel like we've gotten into a lot of these types of like interesting data point based fantasy strategy discussion offshoots, which is really where I think we might be at our best. I am curious because last year there was so much value in that range of the draft for running back where there never has been in recent years, the dead zone, quote unquote. And I think a lot of that was fueled by, I don't want to call it luck, but whatever you would call players like Joe Mixon and James Conner staying healthy. And those types of guys who really return value over these receivers who we were looking at, the Waddle types who either were dealing with injuries, less volume, or bad quarterback play, offensive line situations, versus these running backs who just kind of needed to stay healthy because they were going to get the volume if they did stay healthy. I think that part of it flips back more. I think to your discussion about the top of drafts, that's where it's interesting to me. From everything we discussed, Jacob, I feel like there is that select group, and I'm going to want to get one of those players in that select group. I feel more confident that what you said is going to be true. The biggest factor that this 2025 draft class at running back, one of the best we've seen in the last decade, if not the best, from a depth standpoint and up top, but mostly from a depth standpoint, will screw over a lot of these situations. That's why I'm going to be low man on Chase Brown, even though I do love the Chase Brown talent. I think that Taj Brooks might eat into this. He's a good enough player to have a role in this offense, and that's going to be the case for a lot of these players. I doubt it, but I wonder if DJ Giddens is good enough to have a role in that offense. Devin Neal, who did a lot at Kansas, is good enough to have a role in his offense. All of those things will change more so for me, that second range of backs. I still feel like I want to get one of my top tier backs.
Yeah, for sure. So how I'm prioritizing, how I'm drafting so far, these are half PPR rankings you can see on the screen. I am still totally. Oh, these are running back rankings. Sorry.
By the way, quick plug, God. Little plug God to add in. If you want to get all of Jacob's rankings for half PPR, PPR, and standard leagues, I will be publishing them later today. I need to edit a few more things with salaries, auction draft salaries, salary cap draft strategies. Salaries for each player in each format. So you'll find that on Sportsline in the Sportsline Fantasy Football Bible. Definitely something you should check out. Jacob has is going to have a lot of content in there. So just a heads up there. Go on, Jacob.
Yeah, and let's plug the FFT newsletter again. All this that we've been digging through today is FFT newsletter. It's really, really good stuff. If you can stand reading for that long.
There's some phenomenal newsletters out there. Shout out to Ben Gratch and among others. But I personally think specific to actionable data, Jacobs is the best. And I really do mean that. And I'm not saying that just because he's my co-host and friend. You got to check out this newsletter. All you have to do is go to Fantasy Football Newsletter. Just type it into Google, Fantasy Football Today Newsletter. Boom, it'll be the first link. Type your email in, and you'll start getting that daily in your newsletter during the season for free. And you're going to get all of the data we talked about, but you're actually going to have it in front of you so you can reference it.
Yep, it's free. Okay, so I've got my half PPR rankings here. And I've got Christian McCaffrey and Devon Achane at 11 and 12. I'm totally content with taking them in round one. I've seen our colleague Heath Cummings take Achane as high as 5. I get it, and because they do have this reception upside, and then like somebody like Derrick Henry, who I think makes sense as a round 1 pick if you want to go there and feel secure about it, is fine. But this is where everything I've been talking about the running back position starts coming into play for me.
Yes.
Is that like even guys like Henry and Josh Jacobs, who I feel great about Jacobs. So you've talked about, some of these guys, some of these new guys who might threaten the running backs above them, maybe Isaiah Pacheco loses work to Brashard Smith or whatever. I really would be surprised if Marshawn Lloyd is taking.
Yeah, there's nothing for they skipped that running back. That's a big one.
Yeah. And so like if you want to take a guy like that, I'm fine with it, but I just can't bring myself to click Jacobs over Lad McConkey or
Sure.
Trey McBride or AJ Brown or Malik
Agreed.
Neighbors. Like that's where I'm at with these
My cutoff
guys.
is Henry, by the way, just to be clear. I was talking about that top tier I want to get.
I would so much rather most of the time get these receivers and tight ends at the top. And I've got a few guys who I'm fine with. Bucky Irving is one of them too.
It's the one guy, as good as he is, I can't click Bucky this year at where he's being priced at.
It could be, you definitely could be right. I'm worried about the Tristan Wirfs injury, of course. And he's not going to benefit from some of the cheat code stuff with Liam Cohen that we're going to get to later. But I did just want to show you guys, this is where I'm at on the running back position. Here's full PPR. So I've got Ashton Jeanty, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, still in the top 12, but losing out spots to Brock Bowers and Nico Collins. And then like Derrick Henry's more like back into the round 2 discussion for me. Jacobs, maybe a round 2 pick, but I would rather take Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's kind of where I'm at with the running back position after everything we talked about. And now let's get into these cheat code running backs. So this is the top of the range of outcomes for my projected targets at the running back position. It's how high could this guy theoretically go? They could push above this. We have outliers every single season. But this is where I've got them at. So McCaffrey, 105. His running back or his target share has been down since moving to San Francisco. So I think those legendary seasons are mostly behind us. But without Debo there, I do think we could see more stuff designed to him, catch and run stuff. So I think he's clearly at the top. Alvin Kamara, I think, still has the potential to get there. His median projection is probably lower, but I'm excited to talk to Rich Rebar on Thursday about projections. He does a great job with projections. I'm going to reference a lot of the stuff that he's done and his numbers. Both he and Mike Clay, who is also one of the best in the business at forming fantasy football projections, have the Saints as a top half of the league team in terms of passing attempts this upcoming season. That surprised me. That's a lot more functional than I had been giving the Saints credit for as an offense. So I think we still could have pretty good volume numbers here for Kamara, Chris Olave, and a lot of these guys. This is the one that's really spicy. It's RJ Harvey above Devon Achane, 88.
Oh, wow.
We're going to get into the math on that. He probably will not approach this number. But I think it's within the range of outcomes. And if he gets here, then he just breaks fantasy. Breece Hall, somebody that people forget about. Justin Fields, while he is a scrambling quarterback, his scramble rate has gone down lately, and his running back target rate has just continued to go up year over year. And it's actually like one of the highest in the league lately. Trevion Henderson, we've just seen so much of the running back position getting peppered with targets in Josh McDaniels' offense. I don't think he pushes anywhere close to this, to be honest. His median projection, I think, is like 48 or something like that. But there's a range of outcomes where the offense is actually decent, and he's a big part of it, and he plays more than expected. And that's how he could push up into this range. You're not going to like this one. Travis Etienne.
No, I'm coming around on ETN.
All right. Yeah, we'll get to him in a moment. And
I don't
then
have take lock.
Chase Brown. Yeah, that was just more for anybody in the general you.
Nobody
people
likes
are out on ETN. Chase Brown is the last one. His target numbers were pretty crazy last year, and the Bengals are just a print shop for the running back position.
There's no way the Bengals pass volume stays at what it was last year. That's one of my predictions. There's an impossible way. But yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Vegas has them as the 11th highest scoring offense this year. That shocked me.
That is surprising.
Yeah. Okay. So per JJ Zachariason, my former boss, love JJ, does fantastic work on the Late Round Fantasy Football podcast. Since 2011, Sean Payton's teams have not ranked lower than 6th in running back target share in a single season. That's insane. That we're talking about a 13-year sample size. They haven't ranked lower than top 6 in running back target share. And of course, there have been some awesome running backs there in Sproles, Alvin Kamara, but at the same time, like, this is clearly a system thing. I was talking with Reeves, and we'll get into a discussion about Harvey. And he's like, I don't want to approach projections with offensive coordinator tells. I think it's more important to lean on player talent and looking at the offense and like what makes the most sense with this offense. How is the target distribution going to shake out based on the personnel that they have?
Yes.
Sean Payton, I totally agree with that. I think Sean Payton is one of the few instances where I feel pretty comfortable that this matters. And then you have the Bo Nix factor as well. Bo Nix at the collegiate level and in his first year as a pro checks down a lot. The other thing that makes me feel good about this trend is that it's carried over to the Broncos. They've targeted the running back position a ton each of the past 2 years, even with Javonte Williams and the boys. Like, those are the guys they're
That's the
to.
key to me. The
Right.
fact that Javonte Williams got the volume he got in the passing game.
Yeah. I mean, they produced more running back checkdowns than any team last year. Denver
Wow.
did. And they didn't have a total number of plays that was all that high, but still their total number of running back checkdowns, highest in the league, even though they were 28th in yards per checkdown target, because these guys aren't that good. I think RJ Harvey could really, really expand on that.
He's
And
so
I'm
good.
really, really excited to see how that comes to
Every
fruition.
one of our mock drafts this offseason and our pick by pick series has just been a cycle of Jacob and I overdrafting RJ Harvey. And
No
that
such
includes
thing.
my Scott Fishbowl team.
No such thing. Yeah. So I mean, he goes like basically in the same range as Travion Henderson, and I just don't think it's close. I think Harvey has less competition. You know, Ramondre Stevenson has a bigger contract, and I think has been a better player than J.K. Dobbins. You know, we don't have pictures of Travion Henderson with, you know, Josh McDaniels' daughter floating around the web like we do with RJ Harvey and Sean Payton's daughter. Like, I think it's
I don't
just,
even care about that. I care
I
about
know.
the O-line is amazing. Sean Payton consistently produces great running back seasons in fantasy football. The passing volume's there. The actual player is amazing. Check, check, check. And J.K. Dobbins has a massive injury history. Check. I just think RJ Harvey should be the second or third running back drafted. I'm so high on Marion personally that I would never draft him over him. And I think he's also wildly underdrafted. But I am okay with him at RB3. No lower for me.
Yeah.
For the rookies.
So yeah, it really could get crazy with Harvey. So
Yeah.
Devon Achane, we saw it get crazy last year.
Oh yeah.
Especially in the games that Tua played. It's wild that he pushed up into that 85 target range even with Tua missing time, because he only had a 14% target per route run rate when Tua was off of the field. It was 25% when Tua was on the field. So here's just an insane stat. Devon Achane, over his past 17 games played with Tua, has 177 PPR points as a receiver alone. That would have ranked as wide receiver 37 last year, in between Khalil Shakir and Cooper Kupp.
That's
just
sick.
on his receiving production.
That's sick.
Yeah. So I am totally fine taking him even where Heath takes him, which seems pretty aggressive to me. Okay, Bucky Irving. The Bucks screen game last year was historically good. If you look at EPA per screen play, the only offensive coordinators that have produced a higher rate than Liam Cohen did last year over the past 10 years are Andy Reid, Kevin Stefanski, Matt LaFleur, and Kyle Shanahan. And so I think that is a real credit to what Cohen and Josh Grizzard did. And there's a reason that Cohen got promoted to a head coaching gig right away, and Grizzard got a chance as offensive coordinator right away. Grizzard is the new offensive coordinator for the Bucks, if you aren't familiar.
Grizzard, the Lizard King.
Exactly. So I
get that reference?
No, I mean, are you talking about the band?
Yes. Do you know that band?
King, is it King Gizzard? I don't remember exactly.
Lizard King.
Yeah, no, I've listened to some of their music. Yeah,
they're eclectic.
Yeah, exactly.
Great live band though. I enjoyed their show.
Anyway, the Bucks on third down still use a lot of screens. This is the true beyond the box score, just ridiculous. We're obviously way too granular, but here we are.
Nerd this bad boy out for us.
Almost an identical screen rate on third downs, and Grizzard was the guy who overlooked their third down play calling last year. Identical screen on third downs as on all other downs. If you look at the rest of the NFL, that is not the case. Screens were almost twice as likely to be called on all other downs as on third downs. But Tampa Bay still hammered him. So, like, how much of the credit belongs to Grizzard? How much belongs to Liam Cohen? I don't know. But I do think, based on everything I've heard and listening to Grizzard's interviews, he seems like a really sharp guy. So I would expect getting the ball into Bucky's hands is going to be a big part of the offense. And I do project him pretty aggressively. And I felt really good after looking into Rich Rebar's projections that he did too. We'll talk about him more on Thursday. But I do think receiving can be a big part of what he's done. And if his playing time increases, he could sneak into this range of Devon Achane type of guys. But it's going to be all about playing time, because if they keep Rachaad White on the field for those passing downs, then he's probably not going to get there.
I'm scared on Bucky because I'm scared to be wrong on Bucky because of all the positive things working in his favor. It could be another Jahmyr Gibbs type situation. I just have trouble investing in a lack of potential volume with that type of draft capital, and I always will. It's another blind spot of mine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next up is the Jaguars. We'll transition from Liam Cohen and his former gig to his new one. This is the highest combined backfield expected fantasy point total in 2024. Of course, the Lions at the top, 493, followed by the Dolphins at 466, the Bucks at 439, the Falcons at 415, the Packers at 404. I think that we maybe see the combined number for Jacksonville approach this 400 point number if the offense works. Of course, that's betting on the offensive line being a big part of this, as we've talked about a lot. But I just wanted to point this out that what Bucky was tremendously efficient, but also if you just look at the total, the Bucks are up there with anybody, and that's because of screens and a lot of other cheat code stuff to just really, really put them in advantageous situations. And so who might benefit from that stuff in Jacksonville's backfield? I think ETN is the most likely to be featured in the passing game. They've talked about him in that way. It could be the case where they mix it up so much that he's like in the Rachaad White role, where at the end of the season, Rachaad White was getting like 1 or 2 rushes per game. If that's the case, he's probably not going to be relevant, even if he has this type of passing down role. But if he does get rushing work and he gets the receiving work, he could be really good. Like, if you're out on Tootin, if you're one of the people who reply to me, showing Tootin doing awesome things and tells me that he can't help but fumble or whatever, then you really should be drafting ETN, I feel like. Because if Tootin doesn't matter and it's a 2-person backfield, ETN's going to get some rushing work. It's not going to be 20 Tank Bigsby carries per game, I don't think. So if we're looking at 10-ish rushes with a lot of design targets as well, and an offense that's top 15, I think is where they're at with Vegas expectations as a median outcome. It could be much, much better than that. All of a sudden, like, that's one of the best roles in fantasy. Like, Rachaad White 2 years ago was top 10 in expected fantasy points at running back position. Like, ETN could be in that kind of a role. Rachaad White wasn't very efficient overall as a player, but he was still pretty good for fantasy. And, ETN was very good as a receiver at Clemson. He's a round 1 pick. I just think he's somebody, like, if you're betting on a discount running back, I would rather take him than DeAndre Swift. I think he's really, really cheap. And don't just assume it's over, I guess, unless you are fully in on Tootin, in which case I'm kind of right there with you, honestly. I have more Tootin than I have ETN.
I haven't looked at it yet. I assume I'll have probably most Tank, but I'm warming up. It might end up being ETN. This whole situation to me is very interesting, and it's going to be very defining for our fantasy season because we talk a lot about this Jaguars, man. We've talked about Cohen a lot. We've talked about BTJ. Hunter is a player both of us are willing to invest in at his price point. All these running backs, Trevor Lawrence. And it's like, yes, okay, I do like buying into the play caller, but two realities that we have to accept, Jacob, are: one, Trevor Lawrence has not been good at the NFL level. He was better than I expected in your accuracy numbers when we went over them, but he has not been very good at the NFL level. And two, we're talking about an offensive line that has Walker Little at left tackle, Ezra Cleveland at left guard. I guess Hainsey is their starting center if Luke Fortner has just been struggling. Makari might be their guard. Maybe it's Wyatt Milliam, who they drafted this year. And then Anton Harrison, who was pretty good at I have some expectation for, but not an elite player. It's just, I don't want that to derail because Liam Cohen was great with Tristan Wirfs and Graham Barton and a lot of good players on that line. I just need that to at least be considered because it's something that I'm struggling with as a fantasy analyst.
Yeah, totally fair. All right, let's transition to Travion Henderson. I've got a great tweet from Ryan Heath. Only 7 teams gave 110 or more targets to running backs last year. That's a huge threshold that Josh McDaniels' backfield has hit almost every season that he's been a play caller. And so that's obviously feels good for Henderson. And so to get a bit more granular here, James White, 123 targets in Josh McDaniels' offense in 2018, 123. He had 3 separate seasons with a target per route run rate above 28%. Alvin Kamara is the only other running back that's had more than 2 of those types of seasons since 2010. So truly unique stuff from him. We saw Josh Jacobs' target per route run rate significantly higher with McDaniels. I don't want to get crazy with the Henderson projection, but like it feels like a pretty real trend. I'm a lot more content to bet on the Sean Payton trend than this one.
Okay.
But I did want to bring this up. The only thing I would say on Henderson is like if you look at his numbers compared to some of the other, elite receiving running backs that we've had lately, he's near the bottom of that list in terms of Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane, Breece Hall. Henderson is near the bottom, which that's a really good list, but still, I don't. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. He gets compared to Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's just not. There's nothing that backs that up.
Yeah, he's definitely not Jahmyr Gibbs overall from a talent standpoint. It'll be interesting. The McDaniels system has been potentially heavy targets for running backs, though those could easily, in my opinion, work through Diggs as well and Kyle Williams, depending on his development. So that's just one I'm going to keep an eye on. Jamie is huge on Henderson for this reason. I would tend to agree with you, more so leaning toward faith in Sean Payton than McDaniels as far as this goes.
Yeah. All right, Chase Brown is our last guy, and then we'll finish up with the running backs here. 4.8 targets per game as Cincinnati starter last year. I don't know if he'll get that same type of playing time this year, but if he does, he absolutely could be like a top 5, top 3 fantasy running back, depending on how well Cincinnati's offense does. So what I've got on the screen here is over the past 5 years, the total fantasy point per target number for each team's backfield. And the Bengals, Bills, Chiefs, and 49ers are tied in terms of the most efficient per target number at the running back position. The Bills surprised me, but if you look at their total number, it's not nearly as high as the other ones. So really, there's been 3 backfields. It's the Chiefs, the 49ers, and the Bengals that have just produced tons of running back target goodness. And of course, Christian McCaffrey affects those 49ers numbers. So really at the top, it's like Andy Reid and Cincinnati. So Joe Burrow, basically, I think just really, really is easy taking that check down. And so I wanted to bring up Chase Brown, and then the Chiefs. We were seeing Isaiah Pacheco used more as a receiver before he got hurt. I don't know if it will continue, but like if you look at his early season role and just like when he's been healthy lately, he's been really productive, and receiving has been part of that. So if he's not losing the work to Brashard Smith, then he's going to be a huge value. But if he is, then I think Brashard Smith is really, really interesting because like I've talked about, these targets from the Andy Reid offense have just been so good for the running back position. And he's a converted receiver who is really, really effective as a runner and receiver at the collegiate level.
Yeah, he's a player. The situation in Kansas City, I think, will be interesting. Shard Smith, somebody who could have got more hype if it was a different running back class. I think he's one of those guys like Taj Brooks and even Giddens, who we've talked about, players who we liked a lot on tape. In any other class, they're probably being drafted over somebody like Marshawn Lloyd, who was a 3rd rounder last year, not in this class. I just don't ultimately know, like look, I've seen them talk about like, oh, we were looking to kind of get that Jerick McKinnon role back that we lost, which I get. But like a lot of that to me depends on where the receivers go, right? Like if Marquise Brown is healthy, if Rashee Rice is healthy, if Kelsey is a little bit better, like lost the 15 pounds and moving better, this offense is not going to go through the running backs in the passing game. I just have a tough time getting around to it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I do think that everything I've heard is that they were really excited to get him. So I'm curious what it'll look like, and I think he's a really talented player. And it's just Andy Reid's been so good at this forever, dating back to Philadelphia, getting running backs creative ways of getting the ball into running backs' hands.
Again, trash talked right here by Adam in the chat. What's up, Adam Lee? How you doing? I appreciate your trash talking. I don't know what that revolves around. All right, let's get into the next thing here. Let's move it forward.
All right.
What do we want to talk about next?
Yeah, we'll talk about play action and motion. If you followed me on Twitter, you know that I get kind of obsessive with these two things. Like at the beginning of last year, I couldn't stop talking about Clint Kubiak and New Orleans and what was happening there, where he was doing a ton of plays that had both play action and motion, like more than we'd ever seen before, and they were just lighting the league on fire. It's continued to be a fantasy cheat code. We've highlighted this at times on the podcast, but so play action passes were worth 1.9 fantasy points per target compared to 1.65 on non-play action passes last year. If you look at the receiver end of that, it's significantly more explosive plays, yards after the catch as well on play action passes. The motion defenses are catching up to motion a little bit. It's not quite as effective, but it still has been a big boost for players. And so I wanted to just highlight a few teams and players who are doing this at a high rate and are also doing it at a high efficacy. Because, like I mentioned, I'll lead it off with Puka and Kittle. These two guys are, if you just watch them, two of the most just raw talent, two of the best players at their position and really at any position in the league. Like Puka Nacua just continues to get so much better. George Kittle is clearly like one of the most physically dominant tight ends we've seen. If you add that to these offenses where they're just creating so many spatial problems for defenses and creative ways to get the ball into the hands of Nacua and Kittle, then you have the results that we've seen lately, which is when they're healthy, they're easily like if not the most productive player at their position, like one of the most productive player at their position year over year. And so that's the data shows that as well. If you look at like play action yard per route run, Ladd McConkey was insane last year. He scored more play action points than any pass catcher. He averaged 4.28 yards per play action route. Puka and George Kittle were both above 5. The league average is like just under 3. Those guys are like, it's just not fair. Like it's another level of efficiency that they can tap into. And just adding that, like I wanted to highlight those guys and then a few of the teams that are doing it the most. The Lions, we've talked about, created more play action points than any team last year. The Commanders, though, were actually second in play action dropbacks. Lots of run pass option stuff with Jane Daniels that got the ball into Terry McLaurin's hands on RPOs and stuff like that more than ever before. So his target share was higher than it's ever been. If you look at non-play action plays, Terry's target share was actually not changed at all last year. And so it's like, this is why I bring it up, is because if you find these situations, it makes a tangible change to the player. Like McLaurin last year, a big part of it was having Jane Daniels as such an efficient passer, but also his target share was higher than it's ever been. Michael Pittman 2 years ago, his target share was way higher than it's ever been because he had all these RPO targets. And then last year they disappeared and his target share dropped significantly. And so these are the top teams in play action dropbacks last year. We got the Lions, the Commanders, the Chargers. This is total. The Dolphins, the Browns, the Rams, the Broncos, the Vikings, the Cardinals, and the Colts. Anybody stand out to you from that group?
The obvious ones at the top are not surprising to me. I think the Cardinals, it's not all that surprising. I think that's Petzik's system. I think the Browns would probably be the one that surprised me the most of that group.
Yeah, that's what Stefanski does. If you look at the play action splits for Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, it's significantly boosted by play action. I think basically what I found was that Stefanski's offense funnels play action targets to 2 players, and it's typically a tight end and a downfield receiver. Somebody like Tillman didn't get hardly any play action involvement last year. All of his stuff was just like go win outside, and it was honestly impressive that he was able to do that. But as you look forward, like, is that going to translate if he doesn't have Jameis Winston? Almost definitely not, because I think the offense is going to focus on 2 guys. Okay, so yeah, one team that wasn't here that normally is the Green Bay Packers. They have one of the highest fantasy point per target numbers during the Matt LaFleur era. Like it's basically like Kevin O'Connell, Ben Johnson, Shanahan, and LaFleur at the top in terms of efficiency and total number of play action passes. If you look at the past 5 seasons, the teams that have produced the highest efficiency we've got 2 Vikings, 2 Lions, 1 Packers. So those are the gold mines. But we didn't really get it last year with the Packers because they just were so run heavy. But here we are. They drafted a receiver in round 1. First time they've ever done that. If they get back to trusting the pass game, especially after a year where they really proved they could run effectively, I think we could see just gash plays to Golden, to Jaden Reed, to Tucker Kraft, whoever it is. Like, I
This
want
is
to
a
bet.
big one. This is a big one as far as offense goes for me, Jacob, and I want to get into it, and now we'll get into it on a future show. But as far as what it looked like in 2024, I'm not sold as what it's going to look like in 2025. I think we could be looking a lot more pass heavy with the Packers. I think Love was playing hurt for most of the year, and that impacted what they can do schematically.
Yeah, and that's I want to make these highlights because it's like this is just a boost, like it's not the end all be all, but it could be a big boost. Like Lad McConkey is the next one I want to hit on. He led all scores and play action fantasy points last year. If you look at his non-play action numbers, they actually weren't that good, which surprised me. But it's like this. I don't think that's a McConkey set. I think that's just like defenses know that he's the only thing they have to worry about
Yes.
on the straight drop back game. And so just adding a little wrinkle, just a little thing to throw the timing off a little bit with the play action is enough for Lad to win. And now there's a lot of stuff that they have to worry about. They have to worry about Amari and Hampton. They have to potentially worry about like Trey Harris as like a dominant physical presence on the outside. And some of these other young guys.
Jalen Reagor season. No, just kidding.
if that, like, if you have that and you have the play action, all of a sudden it's like you can't just key on McConkey every single play.
Yes.
And so you might really get some big boosts to some of these guys.
McConkey, it's like as long as he stays healthy, which was an issue for him at Georgia, he's phenomenal for fantasy.
The Broncos, we have to talk about again. Per the fantasy point status week, Bo Nix kind of struggled with accuracy on play action throws. But only Jared Goff threw more play action touchdowns than Nix. Nix and Darnold were tied with 14. So 14 play action touchdowns, even though he wasn't really good as a play action passer. It's a Sean Payton stat, man. Sean Payton designed a really good offense last year. And it's also another RJ Harvey stat. I can't stop. Javonte Williams leads all running backs in play action targets of the past 2 seasons, 54 play action targets. Breece Hall has 46 during that time. He's the only other running back with more than 40. So we're talking about a huge increase in targets here. And, play action targets, the running back position have been worth more than non-play action targets. And I think that we're going to see a lot of those designed to RJ Harvey. There's just so many things where it's like he could be boosted because of the offense. It's not just checkdowns, which they did lead the league in checkdowns, but there's also this. There's a lot of stuff working in his favor. And what if he's good? What if he's really, really good like he looked like? We were excited about him before we knew the landing spot.
Yes.
Because he looked really good. And so I think he could come in and be one of these multipliers where it's like McConkey, it's like Puka or whatever, where all of a sudden you've got this really talented player in a role that's catered to them and is working well, and the offense is good.
Yep. It's hard for me to feel like I'm too high on Harvey, despite how high I have him ranked.
Yeah. All right. I think we can mostly skip over the pre-snap motion stuff.
So let me say this on that. You can find all of this data on pre-snap motion, and it's very interesting. And Jacob does exactly how he was going to break it down here. He breaks down in the newsletter. And if you've already missed that, or you already read the newsletter, you want to again check your inbox. Otherwise, let us know, because I could probably put it into content form as well on the site.
Yeah. One highlight from it, I'm looking over it now. The Atlanta Falcons used a ton of motion. They did not use very much play action. They're one of these teams that most of these teams do a lot of both. And so this is a play caller who comes from the McVay tree. He used motion effectively last year, and it did boost things. They got a lot more bunch formations and stuff like that. They found a lot of creative ways to get the ball into Drake London's hands out of the slot and stuff like that. So this is another offense that potentially could really boost fantasy production, could produce a ton of plays. That's what we saw last year. I think they're the only one that we haven't talked about yet that we needed to bring up here. And now we can get to our last cheat code and not have a 2-hour podcast, I think.
Yeah, we want to keep this under 130 when we can. So we might have to do we'll do a little spark notes on our last cheat code topic, the 4th, and then you'll be able to find the rest in the newsletter. So let's get into that now.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is route concepts. I'm definitely glad we got to this because we put it in the title of the show. So route concepts are something I've been digging into.
It's a learning process for us, Jacob. We'd like to talk a lot, but I think the data's been good, and we'll hear from the comments if that's true.
route concepts is something I've been digging into for a while now, and Fantasy Points data made it even easier. I've been super stoked to see what capabilities they have, and I think it's only going to keep growing what you can do over there. So I'm going to share my screen here. I've got they've classified their route designs as horizontal or vertical or static. So
Okay.
horizontal routes are exactly what they sound like. They're going in or out. So ins and outs, slants are horizontal routes. Crossers are horizontal routes, whereas vertical routes are posts, corners, go routes, and static routes are coming back to the ball like hitches and digs and stuff like
Where's
that.
back shoulders factor in on that? I'm curious.
I would
Probably
assume
vertical.
vertical, yeah.
Okay.
And so they've got here fantasy points per route run, targets per route run, and yards per route run for each of these classifications. And the real reason to hone in on horizontal routes is that the target per route run rate is much, much higher than vertical routes. This is something, if you've listened to the show, I point this out a lot as it pertains to vertical route runners, that it takes a truly special player like Nico Collins or Julio Jones
Yes.
or Justin Jefferson or something like that to be relevant for fantasy if they're in a vertically oriented route tree.
Sure.
Just because you're so much less likely to draw a target on those routes. And so this most recent newsletter was, I wanted to first point out players who are running really deep routes. I've got it sorted by last year data, the average route depth. This is the average cut, the average depth where the first cut in a player's route came. You've got Alec Pierce, of course, at 12.9 yards. No one else is even above 12. And I also have over here the target per route run rate for these players. So like Jordan Addison has been a really good fantasy player because he scored double-digit touchdowns every year. But if you look at his target rate, it's the same as Christian Watson. It's below
Sure.
20% target per route run rate because he's running such deep routes. Justin Jefferson makes it work because he's insane. But like Rashad Bateman, really good player last year. If you look at average separation score, he's near the top, really because he's a really good player in a really good offense. And you might not believe me, but go look up the Rashad Bateman search Jacob Gibbs, Rashad Bateman. Look at his route running. This guy is nasty. DBs have a really hard time keeping up with him, but he does get targeted.
Bateman is so good on tape and has been since his Minnesota days, and he's just not a fantasy relevant player still.
Exactly. You have to be so good to do it. It was a problem for Marvin Harrison last year. His average route depth was almost 11 yards. His target per route run rate was 21.5%. That's fine, but it's not what you want for a guy that's getting drafted where he got drafted. So
yeah, it's not even the best way to use him. Like it kind of is if you have a
we're going to
quarterback like
talk about
Stafford. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've got here is the play designers who were just spamming horizontal routes last year. They had multiple receivers in their offense hit a 40% or higher horizontal breaking route rate. That's Tampa Bay, Liam Cohen, Sean Payton, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, of course, and then Dave Canales was a surprise. So, of course, this is a BTJ stat, Travis Hunter stat. It was a Cortland Sutton stat for the Broncos last year. The Niners, it was everybody. Ayuk before he got hurt. Ricky Pearsall was above 40%. Juwan Jennings was above 40%. He was really productive when he was getting these routes. The Panthers are really interesting. Jalen Coker had one of the highest rates of these type of routes, but wasn't that productive. Adam Thielen was better, but not, relative to horizontally breaking route expectations, this wasn't all that productive. I think T-Mac, Tedero McMillan is such a perfect fit for this in terms of his skill set, and then also being able to work back to the ball on these throws. I think we're going to see a huge year from him. Green Bay.
Yep.
Out of 124 qualified receivers, Romeo Doubs ranked 5th in route win rate on horizontally breaking routes. Christian Watson ranked 7th. Dontavian Wicks ranked 12th. So we've got 3 players in the top 12 in win rate on horizontally breaking routes. This is Fantasy Points data. They chart every single route as a win or loss. Sometimes they're big wins or losses, and that factors into their separation score. But win rate, you can think of more like a success rate. And we've got 3 Packers who have been pretty inconsistent young guys, all in the 90th percentile or better. And Jayden Reed isn't far behind. This is like so clearly a Matt LaFleur stat. And I am just so excited about Matthew Golden's fit in this offense. I thought of him immediately because you look at the horizontally breaking data and it's like all these Packers receivers and Ladd McConkey at the top. And Ladd McConkey is who I thought of with Golden. Golden doesn't move as well as McConkey, but it's close. Like, to me, it's the choppiness and his ability to like quickly transition smoothly on a horizontal, and then also like on the outbreaking deep plane that most speed threats don't have. And I think we talked about the play action, we talked about the motion, and then also the layering of these routes. I think Matt LaFleur is just so good at his job, and I'm really excited to see what it means for Golan, what it means for the rest of these guys too. It's going to come down to who's playing, the most. We don't really know at this point, but I want to bet on this offense.
Just like eye test wise, Jacob, I watch a lot of tape on these offenses as far as utilizing the middle of the field on horizontal in breaking routes, which you've kind of just done a great job explaining why that's so important for fantasy. No one does it better than LaFleur and I'm sorry, not McVay, LaFleur and Shanahan for me, from what I've seen. And so I think those are the two offenses that I have keyed for this. And that's why when it comes to LaFleur and the Packers, there is a lot of opportunity for fantasy for us to get value, because we really aren't drafting those receivers right now. And it's weird because Reed doesn't really win, in my mind, at least in those areas of the field. But I love Reed this year in fantasy, and I don't know why. I just want to get a piece of him. But it's really Golden. Like, can Golden be that guy? Because he was a little bit at Texas, but then you watch like the Houston tape of Golden before he transferred, and it's like, this is a different type of receiver than he's being billed as, in a good way.
Yeah, I like the Houston film too. All right, New Orleans Saints with Clint Kubiak last year. I wanted to highlight that Chris Olave saw his horizontally breaking route rate increase dramatically from 32% to 45% in his first season with Kubiak. He had been good on those routes before. He just didn't get to do them much. Rashid Shaheed really wasn't that good on those routes before. He's more of a vertically breaking guy, but still his route rate increased from 30% to 41% in his first year with Kubiak. This brings me to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had just a 32% rate last year. That's really low. If you look at the top 10 receivers last year, there were 10 guys who scored 250 or more PPR points last year. All of them except for Malik Neighbors and Terry McLaurin had a higher horizontally breaking route rate than JSN. I think that makes sense. I wish Neighbors had a higher rate, but especially McLaurin, it's like that's where he wins, is on the vertical plane. They can both do both, but JSN, it doesn't really make sense to me. I like his work versus press, and I think he can win down the field, but he's not nearly as athletic as Neighbors or McLaurin. And so I think this fit with Kubiak, I'm really excited about. So specifically, the routes that they were using Olave and Shaheed on were a lot of deep out routes, and I think Jason is just going to feast on those routes. Olave was targeted on 38% of those out routes, and JSN had a higher average separation score on out routes than Olave last year. I think he's very good on those routes, and I think that this is going to be a really good offense for him, a big change, a significant change for him. You ready to talk about it?
I'm so curious. We're going to do one more after this, and then the rest of people are going to have to find on the newsletter, because we do want to try to be cognizant of time on this show a little bit. But one note on that before we move to our last team, we'll probably go over. And then again, you can find all this in the newsletter and on the site.
If we have to choose one.
Well, before that, I want to say one thing about Seahawks. JSN.
Okay.
Jacob, I'm having a lot of trouble with this team because I really buy into Kubiak. I mean, doing the film of those first 4 games of the Saints last year before the injuries was fun. And I buy in on JSN, but I don't know if I buy in on that Seahawks offensive line or Sam Darnold. And it's going to be tough for me, but I have to find a way, and you'll help me guide me through this, Jacob, to come around on this offense, because right now I have no shares.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but it was terrible last year. I think I'm just so bullish on the change.
Okay.
With Clint Kubiak taking over, I think it's
get
gonna be so much better. And also the Saints offensive line was really bad. Like last year was projected to be one of the worst. They played better than expected.
True.
But like it wasn't a strength by any means, and the offense was still functional with Derek Carr. So what I would say basically is like, do you feel more or less confident in the offensive line and Darnold than you did in the Saints offensive line and Carr?
Do I feel more?
It's similar for me. I think it's similar.
I'll go similar. I weirdly am a Derek Carr guy, more so than most people. So It is interesting. I know I'm really low on Darnold. We went over it in our quarterback rankings. I got to find a way to come around more on him.
Yeah. All right. If we've got to choose one, which I feel like we could just roll, honestly, there's some really, really good stuff here. But if I've got to choose one, it's Jacksonville. And
Then make you
so,
choose one.
right. Yeah. Travis Hunter, 100% success rate on out routes per reception perception data. This is per Matt Harmon's charting. And then Brian Thomas Jr., I'm really excited that he's going to get more slant opportunities in this offense. He led the NFL in average separation score on slants last year, but only 4% of his routes were slants. Meanwhile, Mike Evans and Liam Cohen's offense had a 10% slant route, was second in the league in fantasy points scored on slants. I will say I don't think BTJ was great on out routes specifically. He coming in, he was billed more as a vertical guy, and that's of course where he's at his best. But getting more of these opportunities, I think, is really exciting. We saw, Liam Cohen just like really, really use these effectively last year. Like Jalen McMillan had a really high rate on these routes as well and was really productive. It wasn't just Godwin and Evans. And so to see Mike Evans, who we've mostly thought of as a vertical guy, he's good horizontally. He's a better mover than I think people give him credit for. To see his rate push above 40% and into this range of like other wide receiver ones, and to get used so much more on slants and in and out breaking stuff, just has me really excited for these guys. And again, it's like Seattle. Do you have confidence in Trevor? Do you have confidence in the offensive line? I'm not saying it's going to be the best outcome, but just having this, I think, elevates everything, the floor and the ceiling, to where it could potentially be a situation where you have one of the best play callers, one of the best designers in terms of facilitating something that could be really, really highly efficient. And then you also have some of the absolute best talent. Brian Thomas Jr., what he did last year, just so absurd. So last year with Liam Cohen, Mike Evans had the best season he's ever had in terms of yards per route run in his 11th season. Brian Thomas Jr. had a higher yard per route run rate last year than Evans did. It was Mike Evans' career best. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. And BTJ, as a rookie, catching passes from Mac Jones, had a higher yard per route run rate. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could be so insane. And I'm not worried about target competition. I think that Liam Cohen will get the ball into the hands of the best players. And I think these two are only going to help each other, BTJ and Travis Hunter. So I'm just so excited for these guys.
Completely agree with you. Again, with Jacksonville, it's so interesting because I'm super high on the upside of all the guys you mentioned, really, including Lawrence. Then, because we have to be right. I need to see it with that O-line. I'm just very concerned about that O-line.
Totally fair.
But I get it, and I want to see, because Brian Thomas, like you talked about, he's billed as more vertical receiver. At LSU, he won a lot on slants. That's the thing. So I think that is what I'm most excited about with this union. Thomas, to me, is just a slam dunk pick. It's why when I'm drafting in snakes this year, Jacob, for the first time ever, I actually like the back end of a snake more so than I ever did, because I'm not as high on maybe somebody like a Bucky Irving round 2 when I can get Brian Thomas in round 2 in a lot of drafts.
Yeah, I totally agree. Last year, it felt like there were only like 8, 9, maybe 10 players that you liked. This year, there's like 23 players that I feel really good about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Maybe a little less for me. A little fewer than 23. All right. For those who want to know, Jacob's highlighting Malik Neighbors numbers. We're gonna go ahead and look. We can indulge my pleasures at any point when it comes to the Giants, talking about Malik Neighbors, the god that he is. I mean, this dude somehow put up 1,200 with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito. But we won't do that today. What we're going to do today to wrap up this show is tell you that to find the rest of this data, you can find it all in the FFT newsletter, which is free to sign up for. Jacob is writing that newsletter, and a lot of it is on the site, as you can tell, as Jacob references it. So just give that a look. More of this kind of data coming on Beyond the Box Score, but Thursday is going to be really interesting in my mind, because we're going to go into the weeds of fantasy football data, Jacob, with the Lord himself, Lord Reeves, in the weeds, Rich Rebar, who I'm sure a lot of you know from Sharp Football, and we're going to have him on. We're going to talk like that. We're going to talk about a lot of the stuff we talked about today at more depth. Some of the things I should say, but keep it locked and loaded on Beyond the Box Score. Jacob, I'm really excited about this. This today was, I feel like, us getting in the groove a little bit more with the show, the flow of it. We still did go a little long, but I felt like we grooved a little more. So as we work through this, we're going to keep giving you data like today, where I felt like it was nonstop. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you can take some of this to your drafts. We expect you'll be able to remember the cheat codes we discussed: quarterback rushing, designed and scramble; running back targets, designed and checkdowns; and some of the route concept and play action motion data that leads to, or motion numbers that lead to, fantasy success. Also, please do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to this, hit the subscribe button, leave comments, juice this up in the algorithm. You know I'm all about the algorithm juice, Jacob, and we need it. It's July. We're getting into heavy draft season. Help us build this show up from scratch so it can be something that you're a part of, we're a part of, and we're very proud of. Other than that, Jacob, anything else before we close out today?
No, just definitely tune in for Thursday's episode. It's going to be really fun.
Yes, sir. Tune in. It's us two and Reeves, just as a final reminder. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you Thursday.